Okay, and we are live right now. All right, welcome to another movie review stream, the first movie review stream of the year 2026. And of course, come every January, that means it's time to catch up on the movies that we might have missed towards the end of the year. Now, there were a lot of films I saw, and a few that I want to cover, and two in particular that I do want to cover in great detail for this stream, just because I really do feel they were the best of the year, and I wanted to get more of a official review out there instead of just looking at my top 10 list. So, on today's stream, we are going to talk about Josh Safdie's latest film, Marty Supreme, which is currently in theaters, about Timothée Chalamet as a ping pong egotist, which is getting a lot of buzz. A lot of people have been out to the theater to see it. And we're also going to be talking about the latest film from the Chinese director Bijan of Resurrection, which is actually opening in theaters this weekend, and it's definitely we're going to be checking out. One that you're going to want to check out. I should have rephrased that there. The other film we're going to talk about are some other Christmas films that came out. Song Sung Blue, a film about a Neil Diamond cover band starring Hugh Jackman. So we'll take a look at that musical, and we'll also be taking a look at Is This Thing On, a romantic dramedy starring Laura Dern and Will Arnett, two great talents there. So we're gonna and directed by Bradley Cooper. I shouldn't have buried the lead there. And starring, not a starring role, but Bradley Cooper is in the film. So a lot of big films to talk about today here. A lot of big star power, a lot of notable films, a lot of smaller films. Before we get all into that, if you'd like to read any of the reviews of the stuff we talk about, you can check out my website, movieswithmark.com. Where I write all about these movies. And if you'd like to spread the word about films like Marty Supreme, which I'm sure doesn't need much promotion at this point, but also films like Resurrection, be sure that you like the stream so that more people know about it, and subscribe for the latest film reviews that we're going to get on this channel come 2026. And also video essays. There's a bunch of ones. I'm trying to finish up one on Jester Bell, which I think should be ready sometime late next week, I think, depending on when I can film it. So a lot to cover. And thank you so much for the subscription, for subscribing, Kick-Ass Life. Wonderful. I'm debating whether I should keep the alerts on, but let's take a quick look at the chat here right now. Super Speed Raven says, almost didn't even notice the Resurrection poster in the thumbnail. Blends in a lot with their black. It does. I always thought that like red would be like a good choice for the curtains, just because like a lot of movie posters tend to favor a lot of the like darkness and like the blues and yellows. But then in came that one. And I slammed it in with like a whole bunch of other films. Yeah, it kind of got cut off there. Delbertrand says, man, this last half of 2025 is packing with some bangers, like one Battle After Another, Marty Supreme, Weapons, Sentimental Value, No Other Choice, Hamnet, and Zootopia 2. It has been a fantastic end of the year, yeah. Not too surprising, although it is quite surprising when some of my favorite films debuted, like Sinners was top of my list, and that was way back in I think like April, I think is when it came out. But even like some of like the award stuff, it came out fairly early. Like One Battle After Another came out around September, October, depending on when it expanded. So that's pretty early. Weapons was in August, so we had a lot of great choices even before we got to all the awards-worthy stuff that comes at the end of the year, which didn't disappoint. It did not disappoint this year. Super Speed Raven 1 says, oh, I really hope you give some praise to Daniel Uptain's contributions on the score. Marty Supreme, excellent stuff. It is a fantastic score. I have actually been listening to it a lot. Like I especially love, my favorite tracks have been Endo's Game, which is like the very brooding electronic score. And then my other favorite one is, just because I'm kind of a sucker for any type of jazz that gets infused to electronica, I really liked I think it was called Escape Route. It's the one where like Marty's fleeing the apartment from the cops, and it's kind of got like that flute and that intense flutteriness to that music. So that's been like the two tracks I've loved. The entire soundtrack in general is just fantastic, but those two tracks I've been loving as much, and I expected to, because I love Daniel's score on Uncut Gems. I have not been able to stop listening to like the tracks of like the ballad of Howie, or Windows in particular. I love that song from the soundtrack. So yeah, fantastic music. Campzilla says, "Evening, Mark. Glad I could make it this time. Saw Marty Supreme. Definitely can tell it's from the makers of Good Time and Uncut Gems. You really can, because it's going to garner some easy comparisons immediately, right off the bat. Aside from just the same director, the same soundtrack composer. So yeah, a lot of similarities. Mitch says, "Glad I get to catch a stream. I very much enjoy all your work, Mark. Keep it up. And let's all keep enjoying movies more." Exactly. Yeah, thank you so much, Mitch. And Super Speed Raven says, "Yes, that moment is so well scripted." Yeah, not sure if it's like for Endo or just the apartments. Yeah, but both of them were great. Yeah, fantastic all around. So I guess that's a good a segue as any to just jump right into Marty Supreme here. So let's just hit the ground running here. All right, let me get my notes up here. Oh wait, hang on. Pete Dencat says, "Hey Mark, sorry to interrupt your flow, but can you turn your mic up? It sounds thin and quiet here." Yeah, I've been having a little bit of problem with that. Let me. The thing is, like, I'm wondering, because this one is like very sensitive. Let me see if I can adjust it here. Okay, I got it turned up pretty high on the boost. I think the problem is, like, it's a directional mic, so I'm trying to like but the thing is, like, it's directional, but it's like it's very sensitive. So if I move it a little, you can hear everything. So I'll try to let me see if I can bring it like straight dead center, and then I think that might help a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, now we're getting like much higher levels on there. There we go. Okay, so you might hear a little bit more of the mouse, because I noticed I was doing some sensitivity testing with this, and it was very much kind of all over the place. So we'll see how well this goes. All right. So let me get the screen up here. Let me get the notes here. I don't know why Steam is updating. All right. Okay. Let me get my notes here. And change the screen. Okay. All right, I got a few different. I got like my notepad here, and I got my other digital notes here, just because there's a lot I wanted to talk about with this film. All right. So here we go with a review of Marty Supreme in 3, 2, 1. So Marty Supreme is the latest film from Josh Safdie, starring Timothy Chalamet as Marty Mauser, who is a ping pong champion with a huge ego, living in 1950s New York. And I know that immediately right off the bat, this film is going to garner a lot of comparisons to Uncut Gems, the other film worked on by Josh Safdie and his brother Benny. And yeah, there are a lot of similarities to that film, aside from the fact that it also features another fantastic electronica score by Daniel Lopatin, which I love. I've been obsessed with that soundtrack. But I think what makes this film a little bit more interesting than Uncut Gems is that when you watched Uncut Gems, there was always this anxiety, because you felt like the character of Howard was just struggling to keep himself afloat, and he was just like one misstep away from like losing everything, like losing his life, losing the money, losing all losing all the momentum that he was trying to build up. Whereas Marty Mauser, I think, is a much more fascinating character in that there's a lot of anxiety for him, there's a lot of desperation, but it always feels like he's just a little bit more in control. That he never feels like, the way that I've kind of described the character is that this is a guy who, it seems like the type of story where it's like the character who fucks around and then finds out. Well, this is a fairly young guy who realizes that I am still in the fuck around phase, and the find out period isn't going to be for a long time. Like, I can still skate by for just a little bit longer on that time. And I think for some people that is going to frustrate them about this type of film, because it's a film where this scummy, egotistical guy who thinks way too highly of himself doesn't get his comeuppance, but you also kind of know it's going to happen. And I think he does as well by the time you get to the end of the film. Because it's fun to just like run around with Marty as he like tries to like scurry to find different ways to make money and the ways that he can deceive people. I think it's a big change of pace for Timothée Chalamet, because like the usual type of characters that he plays in films like Dune or A Complete Unknown are usually these very subdued, kind of like very like introspective characters who are just a little bit quiet, not quite like shy and timid, but just a little quiet in their delivery. Meanwhile, Marty Mauser is just loud, like bragging himself up, just angry, just vicious, just he just lets his mouth run. And I think that's what makes him such a fascinating character, is just he has all this speed and this drive to him where he feels like he can talk his way into any situation and get anything he wants, just because he thinks he's that good of a ping pong player and that great of a negotiator and a businessman that he can just get whatever he wants, and tries to find different ways to get it. In particular, he tries to find a way, like he does have like a love interest with Rachel, who's played by Odessa Azion, and she's like in a loveless marriage, and she's kind of like hooking up with Marty. You know, they have a history together. But that romance is going to be tested when Rachel turns up pregnant. And it kind of feels like Marty is very much kind of running away from that, realizing that, if I settle down with this woman, that's it for me. That's it for my ping pong career. That's it for everything. So he just wants to try to find a way to get out of that situation, which, there's a lot of other stuff going on for Marty. Aside from just, his ping pong matches, which are intense. The scenes where Timothy is actually playing table tennis is really impressive, especially for matches where he has to like kind of like play up to the audience, and also kind of assert himself as someone who can take on the Japanese champion of Endo, and come close to winning, but eventually ends up losing and just kind of like struggling to get a rematch, because that's mostly what the film is about. I think like there's a lot going on in this film, but I think the easiest way to describe it is just that Marty has lost a match to this Japanese ping pong champion and wants to try to like scrounge up as much money and influence as he can to just get one more rematch, just get back into the championship, just find a way to prove himself once more that he is indeed a worthy champion who is deserving of all of his fame. So massive ego on this guy, and you just kind of want to see him fall, and he does fall a lot, just not ultimately. So it's kind of just amazing watching him go on this like bizarre journey around New York, just trying to find a way to make ends meet. And he finds a few different characters to do this with. At one point, he tries to hook up with Kay Stone, who is this wealthy retired actress played by Gwyneth Paltrow, which is a great choice here as this actress who's just who initially is rejecting of Marty because she's much older. She's like, I am in a loveless marriage, but I don't know if I want to hook up with this kid. But Marty knows, like, look, I can ping pong my way into your heart somehow. Just watch me go. Let me talk. Let me work here, and I'll get into bed with you. And sure enough, he does. Which I'm sure he loves, because he's essentially cucking her husband of Milton Rockwell, played by Kevin O'Leary, who is this businessman who owns a pen company that Marty convinces, like, look, if you fund me, I can become a ping pong champion. And of course, it doesn't quite go well. So then another part of the film is just Marty struggling to convince this guy again. So just trying to find any way to get money. An easy way to get money quick, however, is when he hooks up with his friend of Wally, who is a taxi driver here, played by Tyler, the Creator. And they have a good scheme going on where, like they pretend to be strangers, they get in on table tennis games, and they scrounge up some easy money. But of course, that goes awry, like pretty much everything else in this film. It goes so awry at one point that there's a scene in an apartment building that I do not want to spoil, but I will say this. It does involve a mobster played by Abel Ferreira, and it does eventually lead into a scenario with a dog ransom. And it just gets wild and violent from there. And of course, when I saw like Abel Ferreira show up, it's like I figured, man, something is going to go nuts with this guy. Something violent, something vicious is going to happen. And sure enough, it does. It does. And the thing is, like, It doesn't pay off until way later in the film, but man, is it vicious and intense. And it started, making me think more about Uncut Gems, with like that same level of anxiety and intensity. But of course, another contributing factor to that similar feeling is Daniel Lopatin's electronica score, which is just so intoxicating. Now, I know what you're thinking. An electronica score for a film set in the 1950s, you would think that it wouldn't work, but it's so engaging and it keeps up the intensity that it works. You don't start questioning the historical accuracy. In fact, Josh Safdie takes such a sledgehammer to historical accuracy by dropping 1980s like greatest hit songs just immediately, like needle drops in the film. And you would think, wow, shouldn't they play some 50s songs? Like, who cares? It works. It sets the right tone, and it's exciting, and it keeps the momentum going. It doesn't slow it down. It always keeps you engaged with seeing where Marty is going to go next and how he's going to get his money and what's going to go wrong for him. And a lot of stuff goes wrong for him. And it's just, it's fast and it's furious and it's intense and it's exciting. Although I will say it's not as anxiety inducing, because you always know there's just like a few more avenues that Marty can go down if like his current route doesn't pay off well. Like he can always just go to this person, or or beg for money from this guy, or try to convince this dude, or steal money from this location. There's always all these different avenues open to him, where Marty always feels like he has a handle on the situation, even when he is like frantic and just crumbling and just shouting at everyone and just losing control of the situation. And there are scenes where he very clearly comes up to a line and he crosses it. But I think like he just runs his mouth and he doesn't realize he's crossed the line until he like steps over it. And then he just kind of backs off like, okay, yeah, I went too far. I got to back up. But until that happens, he just says whatever he wants. Like at one point, he makes a joke about the competition in a table tennis tournament by saying that he's going to send his opponent back to Auschwitz. And when a lot of the people who hear this from the press are looking at him, he just kind of says, well, I'm Jewish, so I can make that joke. Now, can he make that joke if he's Jewish? It doesn't matter, because in Marty's mind, he believes that he can go that far. He believes he can do anything. And I think that's what makes him such a fascinating character, is just seeing how much farther he can go with this lifestyle before like the money runs out or he gets gunned down. And I think the fact that it just keeps going and essentially doesn't end by the time we get to the final frame of the film makes it so much more fascinating than just being ending the same way that Uncut Gems did, with just having that lifestyle just eventually drown this character. Like it doesn't in this film, but like somewhere down the line Marty's gonna fuck up and he's gonna be done. And it's just and it's one of those things where it's just like it's not said directly, but you can see it in his eyes. Like, yeah, this is not gonna last. You're gonna screw up. And just a fantastic, I mentioned a bunch of great names here in the cast here. Timothy Chalamet was great, Gwyneth Paltrow, Tyler the Creator, Abel Ferrara, but also a lot of surprising roles you would not expect here. Like Fran Drescher plays Marty's mother. She's not in the film a lot, but she has a pretty good presence here. I really liked her. And I will say there's a lot of other surprising actors who show up here. I think one of the most, aside from like David Mamet was pretty interesting. I found it very, especially the role he has in this film. But I was very much surprised by Penn Jillette's role in this film. You almost kind of have to you're almost blindsided by the role that he has in this film, that you kind of have to pull back and just wait a minute, that's Penn Jillette. He just melted into this role. And that's what I love so much about this movie, is that there are so many characters here who just melt into their roles, and they just let the intensity of the conversations and the chaos just fuel them and just keep the story going, where there's so much happening. There are so many arguments and disagreements and action as well. There's a lot of explosions and debate and just crumbling relationships and just money schemes that go awry. Just so much that goes wrong, and yet Marty is able to survive most of this but it won't last forever. That's it's a fascinating angle. Another way to look at the film is to look at the other Safdie brothers film that came out last year of The Smashing Machine, which was a film all about Mark Curran, the wrestler, who had this mindset where, I'm so great that I only focus on victories. And I'm not even going to think about what will happen if I lose. Because if I do, that's just going to ruin my mindset. And of course, in The Smashing Machine, Mark Curran loses, and then he has to kind of like deal with what he didn't consider before. Marty Supreme, however, is a character who pretty much says the exact same thing at one point, and mostly realize that, oh yeah, I can, end up with a little bit of victory here. It's not all I'm not going to lose everything. Not all my schemes are going to pay off, but I can do this. I can attain some level of victory, while still, but also like gain a whole bunch of like scars and have a bunch of losses along the way. And I think that's what makes the film so interesting, and much more than just like another like reprisal of Uncut Gems here, because I know, like I said, there's going to be a lot of direct comparisons to Uncut Gems, but Marty Supreme has a much different tone, aside from just like a much different setting, and it's so surprising to see like Timothée Chalamet in a role where he's just being like this very scummy guy, and you just want to see more of him, just to see how much further he can go with like this plot where everything goes awry. Where it's supposed to like you look at like Adam Sandler, and I know like he's in like some comedies I don't care for, but if you give him a good director, like he's worked with like Noah Baumbach, and he's done some pretty good work, and not even just with like Jay Kelly from last year, but stuff like the Mayorowitz stories. Like I can see there's more to Sandler, so it wasn't too surprising with Uncut Gems. With Marty Supreme, though, it was very surprising to see this side of Timothée Chalamet, and I think this is probably one of the best performances of his career so far. So on that level alone, and just like Josh Safdie's amazing direction here, yeah, Marty Supreme is easily one of my favorite films of 2025. So Marty Supreme is still playing in theaters right now, and it's doing pretty well at the box office. I went to go see it on the Friday after it came out from Christmas, and it was worth seeing again. I'll tell you, man, a packed house to see that film, which I also found surprising. I did not expect I expected a few people to go out and see the film, but I did not expect it to have like sold out showings, which it did. I mean, granted, like there was a lot of screens being taken over by Avatar, but still, let's read through some of the comments here. Let's see. I think we got quite a few here. Let's see. DJ1299 says, I saw Chris Gore reviewed Marty Supreme and said he liked the film, filmmaking, but disliked how unlikable the characters are. Compelling ones to watch, but likability is what matters, I feel. I think you have to kind of look at it from what makes like those characters, like, because you can watch a film with absolutely despicable characters if you feel like there's something that's being lost with them, if it's not like condoning their actions so much. And I don't really feel like Marty Supreme actually says that that Marty was right for what he did in the film. It's like, no, it's like the very last frame of the film is Marty crying, and initially like it looks like he's just crying because of the birth of his son, but it's more just about like, you're not going to be a winner forever. You're going to fall. It's going to happen. And I think that's what made it so compelling. I do understand why people would not like the film on that degree. And I think like a good barometer for that is Uncut Gems. Because I think like aside from just like Howie's wife in that film, like pretty much all the characters are some level of scummy to them. They have some level of deception and greed and violence to them that you do not like them that way. You do feel like some pity for Howie, with him just struggling to make ends meet here. And to some degree, you feel a tiny bit of that for Marty as well. But I do like how Josh Safdie like challenges that notion, Because usually we're okay with seeing like really shitty characters if there's a moment where they fall. If there's a moment where they they crumble, they lose everything, and they just die alone and unhappy. Like that makes it easier to watch a film with terrible characters. And Marty Supreme, what I love about that is how it challenges this notion of, what if he did survive? What if he didn't exactly win everything, but he was able to, go back to like, return to something, have something that he could fall back on, and still like look at him as a loser? Because I do think that's something that needs to be kept in question. Marty, over all of this, is essentially a loser. Like that's the problem with him, is like he only views himself as a winner. So when there's all these other aspects where he screws up deals and potentially gets people killed, it's like, you're like, no, you're not a winner. Like, you screw up a lot, but you just keep going. And I think that's the problem. It's like he's on this track where he can't get off, and I think that's what makes him so fascinating. Because like his life is doomed. There's no happy ending for Marty. Unless he like really changes, and I don't think he will, Let's see. Super Speed Raven says Safdie has a spectacular knack for writing a self-serving, cocky douchebag. It's damn impressive. It is. I hope he keeps making more films like this, and that Daniel keeps doing the score for him, because god damn, does he know how to make music. Campbellzilla says Marty Supreme is a case of watching someone make the exact wrong decision at every possible avenue. Kind of reminded me of White Man Can't Jump. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, with table tennis. By way of Uncut Gems. Oh, yeah. I totally see that now. Super Speeder says, and also, he's great at finding the exact point to knock them out of their element, to make them genuinely scared. Always supported by great performances like Sandler in Uncut Gems or Chalamet here. Yeah. He knows how to direct actors. I think at this point, like, him and Benny, I'll trust any actor in their hands, Daniel Talbert says, I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but Marty Supreme's third act might actually rival and match up to Uncut Gems' tone. Uncut Gems' Tour de Force act, I think, yeah. Tour de Force third act. I would kind of agree. Yeah, I think just because like there's a lot more thrilling aspects to that, like that final like ping pong scene, as opposed like, because like the final scene in Uncut Gems, it's intense, but it's intense in the sense that you're just watching Marty confine these loan sharks while they watch a basketball game, and like the game itself, like there's a little bit intense because he's counting on this game to get his money, but then of course it doesn't really matter, so there's always that element that it's still gonna go awry, and like and you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. But in that film's defense, when that shoe drops, holy shit, does it hit hard. I have not been able to stop thinking about that ending to Uncut Gems. Just the impact that it has on Howard once he gets to the end. It's just so good. Smoke 3 Turd says, hey man, just wanted to pop in and say I love your work and hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you so much. Kjaxana says, my mother is a huge Neil Diamond fan, and I kind of promised I'd take her to see Song Blue. Oh, okay, we'll get to that soon here. Daniel Lapatane says, Daniel Talbert says, Daniel Lapatane be like, screw time period accuracy, just make you feel like Marty Mauser. Yeah, that's pretty much the whole deal there. Hysteria 909 says, oh my god, I was watching the movie and was low-key getting frustrated with Marty every time he did something stupid. Like brother was trying to get ruined in some way because of this. Also, I want to see an actually Tyler the Creator, Only Predicts Point Never Return collaboration of some sort, besides that one song with The Weeknd and Dawn FM. Okay, a little correcting there. Okay. Yeah, I'll be honest. I've listened to a few tracks from Tyler the Creator, but nothing much in like the past few years. I probably should. But man, he was good in Marty Supreme. Let's see. Super Speed Raven says the fact Daniel Epstein and Tyler the Creator were in the same movie and didn't have any musical crossover just hit me. Well, that's hey, I think we've just figured out Josh Safdie's next film. I think they should do a musical. It'd be absurd and be ridiculous, but I think they should do a musical about dirtbags. I think that could be a lot of fun. All right. I think maybe I'll save the best for last year, because I feel like I have a lot more to say about Resurrection. So I'll cover some of the much more recent films that came out here. Okay. Giving him valuable. I think so. I hope he sees this stream. Josh, if you're listening, make a musical. You and Daniel and Tyler the Creator, you got to collaborate. You got to give us that. That would be so much. Even if it sucks, I don't care. I would love to see it. I got to check it out. All right. We'll do a little bit of a light review of Song Sung Blue, just because I don't have too much to say about it. All right. So here we go with Song Sung Blue in 3, 2, 1. So Song Sung Blue is a film based on a Neil Diamond cover band. And there is something weirdly meta about this type of film, that it's about a cover band, but it almost feels like it's trying to act as a cover for musical biopics in general. Because it really does have, the film really does have that tone of just being a generic musical biopic here, but instead of, focusing on a massive musical success who has a lot of turmoil with their fame, this is just about, a cover band that's just struggling to make ends meet and just want to get up there and sing. But also staying true to a lot of the musical biopic tropes and not really changing them up much. And I think a big contributing factor to that is the casting here of having Hugh Jackman playing the role of Mike Sardina, who acts as this impersonator who essentially sings Don Ho, but really wants to sing Neil Diamond. So that's kind of his dream of I am a Don Ho impersonator who sings Don Ho cover songs, but really my passion is Neil Diamond, and I want to soar up. That's his highest height. I want to be a Neil Diamond impersonator. That's the goal. I want to go here. Now, from that framing device, you would think, okay, is this kind of going to be comedic in how it tries to frame a cover band? And the answer is no, but you can see the touches of where it could be a comedy. And I think one of the aspects that really stresses that is the very first scene. You have the opening number where you have a close-up on Mike. So you have Hugh Jackman there. He's got the guitar out and he's gonna play a little ditty, and then they kind of pull out and he's not in front of an audience. He's in front of an AA group, which is it's kind of cute, but the fact that they kind of pull out really showcases just how small he is, for his ambitions. It is, I will say this, it is kind of clever with how they reveal that he's a recovering alcoholic and that it ruined his life and that he, fell down since then and is trying to get his life back together, but also just wants to get back up on stage and sing the songs that he wants. And it makes sense then that he hooks up with his wife Claire, who is played by Kate Hudson, who is another impersonator. And they both connect over Neil Diamond songs. They're oh yeah, let's sing a little Neil Diamond. This is the kind of music we love. And they end up becoming this cover band where their stage names become Lightning and Thunder. And it's just, and like I said, a lot of avenues where you could set this up for comedy. And there are some moments where it feels like it is trying to have a few laughs here or there, but only small ones. Only ones that kind of address a little bit of the absurdity, but never quite embrace it. At one point, they gain a manager who's played by Jim Belushi. And Belushi's character, he's very excited. He's like yeah, I like the idea. I like the Neil Diamond songs you want to play. Like, he loves the way that Mike kind of like describes how he's gonna like establish himself on the stage and take him through the songs. Like, oh, we're gonna come up here, and then here's like the different effects we're gonna have, and then I'm gonna like really stress this part of the lyric. And Jim Belushi is like, oh, I love it. And then you pull back, and it's like he's running casino tours. It's like, yeah, you're hooking up with someone who could help you, but they also have a very limited perspective here. And I almost kind of wish the film would embrace more of that comedy, because when it tries to be a lot more dramatic with the tragedy that befalls both Mike and Claire, it ends up it comes off more like melodrama for how it's staged. And it's like there are problems with them. Like, there's a lot of drama to be had with how Mike is struggling not to like dip back into being an alcoholic, and how Claire has an unfortunate car accident, and she becomes very lethargic and doesn't have that desire to get back up on stage, and that really affects Mike's ability to want to sing again. So there is some drama to be had there, but it never feels like it never quite feels like it's genuine. Like I said, it feels like it's coming off like a cover of so many other musical biopics that it rarely resonates. Because like anytime, like, don't get me wrong, anytime Hugh Jackman and Kate Hudson are both up on stage and they're both singing, like, it's not bad. Like, there's some pretty decent musical numbers, and I expected as much by Jackman, given his presence and stuff like The Greatest Showman. So I expected a few good numbers. They are good, but immediately after they get off stage and they try to find more of like the family drama to expose, the film just kind of like falls back on all the tropes and never really does anything all that interesting with it. It always feels like it's trying to make something more out of something where it really doesn't have to be that theatrical. Like, if it were more grounded with presenting these characters, instead of like making them seem more like larger than life, how they were like soaring to the top of the charts, and like they lived fast and they die hard, because one of the things they bring up is like Hugh Jackman's they bring up Mike's heart condition, and it's really jarring how like the film just like darts to like tragedy so quickly. Like, at one point, after Claire is struck by a car, she's in the hospital, they're doing surgery on her, and while Mike is trying to like calm down his kids, he brings one of his children into another room and says, look, I think I'm having a heart attack. You got to give me a jolt of the defibrillator, like, right now. It's just like, it really feels like there's this desperation in the film to really enhance the drama so much, as if there's like a fear that running out of money and losing that inspiration isn't enough, that it has to be more grand and more theatrical, and that it's got to replicate so many other musical biopics that came before it. And I think that really hurts the film in making you care more about these characters, who it should feel like it's a different film. It shouldn't feel like other musical biopics. Like, this was a cover band. And in fact, like, Mike is so like far out of the loop that at one point, he doesn't even recognize Pearl Jam. So it feels like there should be more of like a grounded working class nature to this type of story. And it's just not there. It's just replicating so many other, musical biopics that came before it without much of any real creativity here. And I think the one scene that best encapsulates this film is towards the end, where Mike has endured a blow to the head and just tries to like super glue it up as quick as he can, so that he can arrive on stage and just play one more song before he succumbs to his injuries. And that is very much Song Sung Blue. It's a film that's trying to be a musical about a cover band, and really stress like the performances when Jackman and Hudson are on stage, but it's held together with this very rickety framework of trying to make it seem more theatrical and grand than it really is. I think there was a huge missed opportunity here to do something really different with a musical biopic, especially about a cover band of all material here. And director Craig Brewer, I feel, just kind of falls back on all the usual bag of tricks, and it does not work here. Like, sure, like Hugh Jackman, Kate Hudson, they give fine performances here. But, but when they're, like I said, when they're off stage, they are struggling with this material, trying to, like, squeeze out as much drama as they can from a situation where it shouldn't feel as, as massive as it does for what's essentially a struggling family. Like, there should be some more drama there. Like I said, it should have more of like kind of like that working class vibe to it, instead of just like this working class family that's glammed up to look like every other musical biopic. It's frustrating how much potential there was with this type of story, and that it's just really wasted here. So yeah, I really did not dig Song Sung Blue. So Song Sung Blue should be playing in theaters for a little bit. I think it's I don't think it made too much money, so it's probably on its way out. Super Raven says, to be fair, Songs and Blues' relative lack of humorous reflection on the musical biopic, that's somewhat treaded ground, what with the Nirvana and the Weird Al Yankovic story. Yeah, and the thing is about that though, I'm not expecting like the comedy to be too like the comedy with Weird Al, the Weird Al story, and the comedy with the upcoming Nirvana film is that it's trying to be more meta. It's like the band's, the identity of those characters are like pulling back and winking and toying with it. I think there's more like genuine comedy that you could probably find through this material, instead of just trying to make it way too over dramatized to the point where it just feels so artificial. And I think that's the thing, is like, I'm not quite looking for like the meta humor of stuff like the Weird Al Yankovic story. I'm more just looking for just like, very like tongue in cheek, and maybe like a little bit of like that wry humor that you could do with this material, because that way you could still make it sympathetic, but also still have a little bit of fun with it, where it just didn't feel like it was trying to be like every other film. Like that, even like, yeah, like this is Spinal Tap is very much meta with the rockumentaries that it's trying to mock. So I suppose you could see it as a bit more bold to take such a weird meta idea and play it mostly straight. Though, yes, it absolutely is by the numbers. Yeah. And I think, like, I have a lot of issues with the film, but I think that's probably the biggest one, is that it feels like every other musical biopic for a story that really didn't have to. It did, and the thing is, like, usually those films are like they're vehicles for actors to prove their worth, but it's like we already know that Hugh Jackman can sing. We've seen him in The Greatest Showman. Like, I don't even like The Greatest Showman, but I'll admit, Jackman has a musical presence. He can be in a musical. But the fact that he ended up in this kind of cover band thing, I think is just kind of like a waste of what you can do with him as someone who really loves, singing and performing. So yeah, it's a huge missed opportunity. It's like every other musical biopic, and it really shouldn't have been. All right, another brief one here. I don't have too much to say on this one. All right, let me get the notes up here. About halfway through, just got 2 more reviews to get through. Thank God I got my tea here. So I got my tea and I got my water. I'm surprised that I don't know if y'all can see this. Maybe I could get it here, but I always have this water bottle here. This is a water bottle from a film from 2 years ago called Niad, which was about the swimmer who was gonna set a record, but she ended up getting stung by jellyfish. She still, made the record, but also like to have the jellyfish on the, I don't know, it's bizarre. That's partially why I keep this thing. It's just because I found the marketing bizarre for it. All right, just in case no one's confused, we're about to do a review of the film Is This Thing On? I know my microphone is on, so nobody make that joke. All right. Here we go with Is This Thing On in 3, 2, 1. So, Is This Thing On is a romantic dramatic comedy by Bradley Cooper and co-written by Cooper as well, while additionally being co-written by Will Arnett. And the premise initially is very fascinating. You have this couple who is Alex and Tess, who are played by Will Arnett and Laura Dern, and they are essentially a couple that are going to divorce. They have 2 children, and they've kind of like fallen out of in love with each other, but in a way where I don't think they hate each other so much as just they've kind of just fallen out of love with each other, and they don't like it feels like they're just on the cusp of about to blow up and get angry at each other and just start fighting, and they don't want to get there. They come up to that line and they're just like, you know what, it's not working, we should get a divorce. And sure enough, that ends up happening. But after that, Alex tries to find a way to cope with being divorced, and so he decides to go to a comedy club. And what's interesting about when he gets up there on the stage and starts talking into the microphone, he is not so much telling jokes so much as he's just kind of like venting and just revealing how hard it is to go through a divorce. And a lot of the comedic bits and like the stuff that should be jokes, he just kind of stumbles into. And it's fascinating to see him just kind of just discover that when he gets up on stage. Because initially he just goes into the club because he realized, oh yeah, if I say I'm performing, they'll let me in and I don't have to pay the cover charge. So yeah, sure, why not? Why not? I'll get up on stage. I'll give it a try. And as he's just up there and just talking about all the difficulties he's having with going through a divorce and getting used to it, he just kind of stumbles onto jokes. He's just kind of like, oh yeah, that's actually pretty funny. It's just, I'm glad you're all sharing in my pain a little bit, and I'm making y'all laugh. And so he just kind of makes that his regular thing. He just keeps getting up on the stage a few nights, ever so often, and just hangs out with other comedians and just lets himself be honest, just like break free and just have a little bit of not quite like venting, because like there aren't as many moments where he's angry, but just almost kind of like quietly like, yeah, this happened, or I hooked up with this one woman and there was like, woo, yeah, it's like, hey, okay, yeah, I got the audience on my side here. And I'm getting it by just revealing more about myself that I haven't revealed as much to others. And the thing is, like, with this material, you might think, okay, is this going to be more of a comedy, even though it seems like it's being set up more to be like a drama. But I think the fact that that Alex's stand-up comedy bits are so much based on just the trials and tribulations of being divorced, it really does ensure that they're never going to lose focus of the dramatic elements. So the film kind of has this. I know this, it's very much like a dated comparison here, but it very much felt like a Woody Allen type of film, where it just lets you live with these characters enough and just linger on the dialogue and just watch where it carries them into these very like believable conversations, like Alex and Tess, like they go back and forth with each other. In fact, before they get divorced, they have one last gathering with their friends in which they kind of connect a little bit over talking about how like their friends don't bring out like the good stuff of like booze and drugs for their parties, and then they just kind of hook up a little bit on the subway with after stealing one of their like THC snacks. Like they just get a little bit stoned, and it's just like a nice little like farewell before the divorce takes hold. So a lot of the film is just Alex struggling to find himself up on the stage, but also like Tess trying to get used to the life of being divorced, and also slowly the two of them kind of start gravitating back to each other, but not in kind of like a grand romantic gesture sort of way. Like the two of them are dating, they do hook up with other people, but they kind of like stumble back into each other's lives, and they start talking a little bit, and they get frustrated with each other, they get frustrated with their friends, and there's very much like this natural flow to exploring like all the different avenues that come with it. Like at one point, like Alex tries to have a healthy relationship with his children, but at one point they discover his notebook of the jokes that he tells, and they're just like, "Oh, you talk like mom about this," and Alex kind of has to like slow down and say, "Look, it's just it's jokes, it's a character, it's just someone I play," and it's like there's a little bit of truth to that. It's a little bit of a half truth, because yeah, some of himself is coming out on stage, but the other part is also just playing it up to the audience. And but you understand like that pain that his children would have if they find that out, and how they want to break down in tears, and just like Alex has to let them know, like, no, it's not your fault, and I don't truly hate your mother, it's me getting stuff out, it's a character, I'm just playing it. And it's just like there's all like this pain that comes out, and all these but very like relatable moments in between like the comedy here. It's like it's very much like, you look at like Will Arnett and you think of stuff like, like BoJack Horseman, and this is very much that BoJack Horseman type of deal, where it's like, there's some comedy to it, but there's also like a lot of like gripping and relatable drama, and you do get to see kind of Will Arnett disintegrate and explode at times, which is how frustrated he is with his life, while still having like those little moments of comedy in between. And just hanging out with him, I think, makes that work so well. Like you have like their quirky friends that you get to know. I think that really helps here. You also have like a lot of like familiar comedians who come up on stage like in between the acts that Will Arnett has. Like at one point, like David Tell gets up on the mic. It's like, oh my god, I haven't seen David Tell in a while. And they let him like tell like a few jokes before they cut away back to Alex when he goes off stage. And then you have like someone else who like manages the club here of Amy Sedaris, who also cracks a few jokes as well. So just like there's a lot of great. I love like the little hangout moments that Will Arnett has with like all these other like different comedians. Just hearing them talk, and I think that's the best way to describe the film Is This Thing On, is that it's very much a hangout movie. It's you get to hang out with like these very like messy characters who have problems going on in their life, but problems that you can relate to, and problems where I think where it's like you're interested enough where you would want to sit down and have a beer with these people and just hash out a few things, and maybe just joke, if only to provide a little bit of like comfort from all the other pain that they've endured, and just get to know and like them a lot. And the film gives us a lot of moments like that where we just get to hang out with Laura Dern trying out the dating scene and connecting with her children, and Will Arnett just like getting used to the divorce lifestyle and trying to talk to his friends about how like maybe he's on the rebound or not, and just all these many aspects that I think that by the time the film kind of almost like builds up like the courage to bringing back Laura Dern and Will Arnett on good terms, it feels very much earned, because you feel like you've spent enough time with these characters, you've seen them grow, you've seen them suffer, you've seen them reconnect, you've seen the way they talk with each other, and you just want to see them at least just like be there for their kids, just be back with each other, just if only to talk and to be more honest, even if they do stumble a lot here and there. But I think like that's very much a huge component of recognizing certain relationships, is that they are going to be rocky and you are going to have problems with them, and that it's not going to be easy, and that sometimes it's not going to resolve itself and you're not going to be able to move on. But sometimes I think ultimately what the film is what I think the film is trying to stress is that sometimes it's comforting just to talk about it, whether it's with friends or up on stage in front of a crowd. And I think just being that open and not just letting everything fester, and just being a little bit more honest about yourself, I think is what really makes this film shine about a divorce with some catharsis through comedy. So it becomes a little bit just more than just That just Will Arnett playing like this guy who finds a comfort playing up in clubs when dealing with divorce. Like there's a lot more that goes on with that, and I really appreciated Bradley Cooper's direction in here to just hang out with these characters, make you care for them, spend enough time with them, and just grow to like them. And just wonderful dialogue here. And Will Arnett and Laura Dern, I doubt I have to stress that they give good performances. They always do. But they always kind of do, like in films where I don't feel like they're used enough. And here, I really feel like Bradley Cooper uses them very well. Like these are gripping characters that are fun to just hang around. Whether they're arguing, whether they're bickering, whether they're telling jokes, or whether they're just getting high and drunk together, or having sex. Like there are actually a lot of passionate sex scenes in this film, which I was surprised about, because I expected there to be some sex with, Will Arnett being on the rebound, but when he has like his first, when he first gets back into bed with Laura Dern, there is like that argument of like, are we back together? It's like, I don't know, but we felt something and we went with it, so I guess we kind of gotta deal with it. But you understand why they would go in that moment, because like the chemistry and the passion is there, where that sex scene does feel very, very earned, and there is like a bit of awkwardness to it as well. So I love how much realism that Bradley Cooper is able to maintain in this scenario, where I think it really could have gone awry. But I think with the help of Will Arnett co-writing, I think it really does feel like a film where you like these characters, and you just want to hang out with them and watch all the drama and comedy unfolds. Yeah, I really had a good time with Is This Thing On? So Is This Thing On will be, I think it's still playing in a few theaters, but it's a fairly small release. You might have to look around for it. Let me read a few of the comments here. Attempting to prove Hugh Jackman can sing is definitely redundant. Yeah. Gotta leave now, but it was great being on stream. Have an excellent night. Thank you so much, Super Speed Raven, for stopping by. Good talking with you on Song Sung Blue. I haven't actually talked with many people about that, so it was good to have that. Like usually, I talk with other people and critics when we go to the theater, but you get towards the end of the year and it's all digital screeners, because there's not enough time to get like a press screener for the theaters to go to. So a lot of stuff I end up watching alone come the end of the year, which is it's the nature of the game, But we'll get back into the swing of things, because I think we got I know for sure I'm going to be seeing the Bone Temple, the 28 years later sequel. So look forward to that in the next few weeks. Are you familiar with an Australian rock band called King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard? I don't think... It sounds familiar. I think... God, it sounds familiar. I think I might have heard it mentioned in... this is a weird hole I went down, but for a while... I was watching all of these Australian TV Christmas tapes, which for those who don't know what this is, like at the end of the year, a TV channel will have I don't think they do this anymore, but they used to. But at the end of the year, they would make a Christmas tape where at the Christmas party they would showcase all of the bloopers and the inappropriate moments they could never show on television. And sometimes they would have weird skits that they would put on for these videos as well. And I do think I remember like King Gizzard being mentioned at one point. If I'm remembering correctly. It's been a while since I've watched these. I fell into that hole like about 4 years ago of just watching all these like Australian television Christmas tapes from like was it 9 and was it yeah, well, I mean like the 9 and Channel 7 and ABC, so yeah. I think I remember it. Yeah. I stumbled onto that because of the I'm sure everyone's seen like the bloopers of Aggro from Australia. The kid show puppet with a mouth. You like even when they didn't do bloopers, he would say like some surprising stuff I wouldn't expect him to say. But the adult bloopers are just on another level. So okay, we got one last film. Yeah, which is good because I can feel my voice like cracking here. So I'm gonna get my tea, and then I'm gonna get my water, and then we're gonna talk about the best film of last year. That's right. We're talking about the one, the only, Bijan's Resurrection. Okay. So let me get into the spirit. Let me get the notes up here. And here we go in 3, 2, 1. So, Resurrection is a film by director Bijan, and these are the type of films that I love so much because this film gave me something that I don't experience too often, but I always cherish it when I feel it, which is that if I watch a film and I watch it in the theater, I come out of the theater being like, I feel like I've been to another planet. Like I don't recognize anything. Like I feel like I've been somewhere else entirely. Like I've experienced an entirely different like dimension from my own, and I forgot about everything in life. And I think that's what a lot of people want to feel when they go to the theater. They want to just lose themselves in the screen. And a few films have done that for me. Films like Princess Mononoke and Blade Runner have done that for me, and Resurrection also joins that list because I think Bijan really like swung for the fences with this type of film because I think it's a very ambitious film, and I think it could go awry so easily and become like too simplistic for what it wants to do. So the premise of this film, or at least the framing device they have, is that it's the future where all of humanity is kind of like turned away from dreams in exchange for longevity. And I think there's something like weirdly reflective about that, where a lot of people have kind of like thrown away their dreams just for the chance to live, which I think, it's easy to see like the allegory there, but there's much more to the film than that. Like in particular, the only types of people who can still dream are called like the Delerants. So one of them is dying. Like one of the few who can dream is dying and is taken in by this one woman who decides to grant him kind of like a peaceful death. She grants him a peaceful death by essentially installing a camera or like a film projector inside of his body so that he can experience all these different aspects of the world and these different sensations through the magic of cinema, which she pretty much says at one point. She's trying to connect with this dying person through the language of movies. And it's weirdly meta when you see the film in that context, because it feels like, she's doing this for us. Like she's giving us something more to feel in movies right before, like our mortality kicks in, and that's it for us. So just give us something more to go on. So we get this anthology of different stories here that are all centered around the different sensations relating to the Buddha. So you have aspects of taste, you have aspects of touch and smell, and just all these different sensations that come across through all these different stories, which are kind of like strung across the 20th century that are told with different characters. and they are radically different stories from one another. Like at one point, there's a very surreal tale of a thief who connects with the spirit of bitterness, who's just like he's alone. It's just like he's alone in just like this desolate environment, and bites into like this stone, or just he just has this conversation with a spirit who who's like trying to grapple with what it means to be alive, and what purpose there is to existence. And the spirit is very like he doesn't like speaking like riddles so much. He's just kind of like very, very blunt, and he has like this very eccentric nature to him, even though he's not very open about what he's trying to talk about here. Then you have stuff like there's one story involving smell that involves a con artist who's trying to convince people that like this little girl is very magical, and that she can harness this ability to smell cards to like pull off these incredible card tricks that a lot of people in this type of setting actually value. And it's a little bit it was kind of interesting. It was very, very understated here. I love how like as opposed to the story about talking with the spirit of bitterness, where it was very surreal and had like all these like dreamy transitions, the story about this con artist teaching magic to this little girl felt like it was like a very understated version of something like Paper Moon, where it's like the two of them connect, but on like this very, very quiet, very meaningful level, where like there's always like danger and violence just around the corner. And then there's the closer here, I think, is like one of like the best entries, which is about it takes place in a port city in 1999 on the last day of the century, and it involves this basically like this hoodlum called Apollo, who hooks up with this vampire singer and tries to like hook up with her at a karaoke bar, and he runs into some trouble with some other vampires, and some violence ensues, and they try to like fight back and like make their romance work, even when it feels like their lives are going to end by the time that this night is over. And it's way different than the other entries, just because, like, for one, there's amazing color. There are scenes where it's just like bathed in red. There's great POV shots where we just like follow the vampire singer through this town with like this very long shot, and there's like we're seeing like the POV of someone who's like right behind her and following her. And then you have like these like karaoke song numbers, which are they're kind of interesting. And then you have scenes where like people get shot through the hand, and the camera just kind of like follows them all around the room. And there are so many different styles and techniques here. And I think it works just because the film never becomes so simple with like the anthology of stories that it's trying to stress here. And throughout it, there's always this reminder that the derelict who's there's always this reminder that the derelict is aware that he is dying, because in between the stories, like the only thing that we have kind of as a transition is just watching wax melt. So it's just kind of this reminder that you're experiencing this story, and you get to live with these characters. You get to experience every sensation that they have, but you're not immortal here. You're going to die. That's the sad truth here. It's like you are not going to live forever, but through the magic of movies, you can experience more. And that's ultimately what I love so much about film, is that it has this aspect of empathy where you can place yourself in the shoes of others and become someone else and see something entirely different in this world. And just exploring all the different like turmoils and passions and fun and romance and this existential dread. You get to experience all of that, and to have that be like the last thing that this that this dreamer gets to see right before he dies, I think is just such a a beautiful aspect, especially with the like the style they use for like the future scenes that bookend this film of the dreamer experiencing cinema for the last time, is all framed in like a silent movie style. And what I mean by that is not that it's like that they use kind of like the black and white or the flickering nature. It's that they kind of rely a little bit on how they would use like cards for dialogue there. So it has that essence of a silent movie, but it's not like straight up just an homage to like how silent movies were shot in every aspect, which I guess could be said for a lot of what Begon is doing here, because I think he's really like trying to take all the elements of cinema here and try to like juggle them and say like, okay, let's do this, and let's see if we can explore more about what it means to be human through this style and these types of characters. Like one, I almost entirely forgot to mention the first story that starts all this off, which is a detective story that relies on hearing, that involves a theremin and someone getting stabbed in the ear. And it's still, and even that story, you would think that would be like a little bit more gritty, but it's still very like very dreamy. Like you feel like you're drifting in and out of this story with like the way that like the camera kind of wanders off and transitions to different scenes, and then you're almost kind of like lulled into like this this kind of like lullaby by the theremin, and even the scenes where like where someone gets stabbed in the ear, it still kind of feels like, oh, like that's kind of shocking, but it's like, with everything that's being set up here, you kind of feel like anything can happen, and that these stories can take any route, and just they're beautifully shot, just like I said, a variety of styles here, and I do really like the colors and the POV shots of the last story, but all the stories in general just look beautiful. To different degrees, they use different colors, they use different lighting techniques. They have much different characters, despite pretty much all the characters, the primary characters being played by Jackson Yee, who really does a good job here. I love just watching him kind of melt into all these different roles here, and I think for one, it's a great showcase of his range. But I think it never really distracts you. It never, even like, there's also a returning character played by Shu Kui in a lot of these stories. But it never quite felt like like something like Kinds of Kindness, where you recognize all the actors and you're just kind of watching them put on a different story in a different play. It always felt like these stories were unique, and that they weren't just trying to stress the same theme or the same style or the same character quirks. Like, it was always something different and always trying to be all encompassing of what it means to be human, and what it means to live, and what it means to appreciate all the different sensations that we have in our lives. And what immediately made me love this film by the time it got to the end, I should stress that differently. Now, what made me love this film the most was the ending, because when you get to the ending, there's a scene where we see the title card that says "The End," but then like kind of like the camera pulls back and it showcases that the title card for "The End" is being shown in a movie theater with all these different people watching, and you kind of watch as time passes really quickly. And you see the different people kind of like fade out of there the same way that, like people die and they just kind of go away, while you watch the theater just sit there and decay as the projector keeps playing, and just sitting there and seeing that moment, just seeing, your own mortality like shown back at you, the fact that you're going to be sitting here watching this movie and then one day you're not, and that even this theater that you're in, it might not be here. It might exist in some form, but it might get torn down. Like, think how many theaters have like shut down in your lifetime. Think of where you've been, where you've sat, and they are no longer there. And how it's kind of like that. It has that similar sensation to how we exist in life. How we're here one day, and then the other day we're not. And it really it really got to me, and it made me like really question existence on a level that just, and I know this is going to sound corny, but it felt transcendent. It did. It took me out of my body, and it made me feel like I was experiencing something more to life, and appreciating all the different sensations, just before the clock winds down, which is, it's very much an appropriate title for this film, of a resurrection, where we feel like we're experiencing something different, like we're being born again through something in our lives that makes us feel alive. But in essence, we're all just kind of melting down, kind of like wax on a candle. So it's just like for the dreamer who's experiencing these different visions and lifetimes, like for him, it's probably very much, it feels like a resurrection, like he's becoming someone else, like he's dying and being born again in so many different forms, even though he's really not. He is essentially dying, but getting to experience something with it, which I think is just life in general. We go through life. A lot of people just look at it as, like you're born, life sucks, and then you die. But before you get to that moment where you die, the most fulfilling aspect is just being able to experience all the different aspects of life. And not in a way we're just like, oh, you have to experience, like the joy of children, or getting married, or buying a house, or any like superficial commonalities that usually come with with like growing up, and what that entails. It's more just about the sensations, that feeling where you can smell something lovely, or taste something bitter, or hear something eerie, or lose your hearing, or taste something awful, or taste something passionate, or just sharing a kiss with someone, just anything that makes you feel alive. And I think that's what made me love Resurrection so much, is that it's a film that makes you feel alive. It makes you feel in there and aware of that moment of your place in this world. And just on an existential level, I just love that feeling that it gave me. So yeah, Resurrection is easily my favorite film from last year. So I guess you could say I liked Resurrection. It will be playing in limited release. I think it's going to be a limited release this weekend. So if you have an art house theater, go looking for it if you can. Because I think the best way to experience this film is in the theater. Because I'm telling you, when you get to that final scene, and you're sitting there in the theater, and you're watching that theater decay while all these different souls, like their lights, just kind of like leave the room, that's going to be a mesmerizing moment. And I don't think you're going to be able to replicate that easily at home. You might be able to, but I think in the theater it's going to be best. But if you can't get out to the theater, or if you don't live near an art house theater, if you do want to experience it at home, the film is being distributed by Janus Films, which means it will be on the Criterion channel probably sometime in late spring, depending on how quickly they want to get it on the service. Criterion will sometimes, they sometimes drag their heels a bit with when they get stuff in theaters, and they want to get it on streaming. They want a little bit of a time there so that people actually go see it. And I hope some people do go see it, because that really was my favorite film of the year. It was, for anyone who watches this channel, it's in my top 10. It's my number one film, just because it made me feel everything, and made me feel it everywhere, and all at once. And that was too easy of a joke, but I feel like I was going to walk into it, so why not? Okay, so let me hydrate a little, and then we'll do a quick recap of the movies that we reviewed on the stream. All right. So, we reviewed Marty Supreme, the latest film from Josh Safdie. Very intense film with a fantastic performance by Timothée Chalamet, playing a egotistical table tennis champion who realizes that he has a few more years left of just scurrying around and trying to prove that he's not quite a loser, when in truth he probably really is. I also reviewed Is This Thing On?, a dramatic romantic comedy starring Laura Dern and Will Arnett, which has some nice and relatable moments of a couple trying to deal with a divorce and how they try to grapple with where to go next in their lives. Beautiful dialogue, great direction by Bradley Cooper, very fun film. I also reviewed Song Sung Blue, the film about the Neil Diamond cover band starring Hugh Jackman and Kate Hudson. They're fine on the stage, but when they're off that stage, the film just falls back into all the typical melodramatic tropes of the musical biopic, which really hindered the film for me and prevented me from appreciating their musical performances. And finally, I reviewed Bijan's latest film, Resurrection, a great film about a dreamer whose last dreams are experiencing different lives from the 20th century through the magic of cinema. I felt so much from this film, and it really does stress all the greatest aspects of life. And you're in for a transcendent experience if you see this film. It was my number one film of 2025. So, of all those films, I think the one you can probably see right now in theaters, that it should be in most mainstream theaters, is Marty Supreme. Resurrection should be expanding, if not this weekend, then the next weekend. But do check it out if you can. I do think it's worth seeking out at the theater. Otherwise, you can wait for it to debut on Criterion. And Is This Thing On? Is not bad. So if you've already seen Marty Supreme, or it's already sold out, which it very much could be, try seeking this out for whichever theater might still be showing it right now, because I really appreciated it. Mr. N1 says the real question mark is, what kind of horror books can you recommend? I just started with House of Leaves. Ooh, that's a good question. I'm just kind of looking over at my shelf here about what particular horror books. It's a little hard for me because I don't know. I don't read as many horror books. I mean, I guess like the last one you could technically count as like I recently read The Long Walk, just because I really like the film. I don't want to read the book. Yeah, I really love that book. It was fantastic. But yeah, I mostly read like sci-fi and stuff like that. I've been what have I get? I've been trying to like get a little bit more into Kurt Vonnegut, so I've been rereading Breakfast of Champions, which is a lot of fun to get through. So that and and I just finished this is a pretty good one. The other Vonnegut, Sirens of Titan. So I've been trying to get a little more into like Vonnegut. I like some sci-fi dystopian stuff, and some bio. Like I also like reading about film a lot. I mean, that shouldn't be any surprise, I think, to anyone. Like where's a good one here? I mean, like I'm a sucker for. I have a massive pile of essay books. So I read like Film Genre Reader, which has like a bunch of pretty good essays in here. I particularly like the one which talks about immigration as it relates to Blade Runner. So I read a whole bunch of stuff like that. Not as much horror though. I probably should read more horror. But I do have a lot of sci-fi films here. Like I've got like, I can't reach it from here, but I've got Snow Crash, and I think I got 1984 over there, and all the Frank Herbert editions of Dune. So yeah, I unfortunately can't recommend as much good horror. Like the best horror book I read recently was The Long Walk. So not enough insight. Like I mean I've read like more classic stuff like the Frankenstein and Dracula, but not much more modern stuff. So Rezio Renji says, "Hi Mark, really enjoyed Marty Supreme when I saw it in theaters recently. Such a bonkers plot back to front." Exactly, yeah. That's what I love about Josh Safdie. He knows how to make it work. Mr. A1 says, "I was a little disappointed from what I heard about the movie Good Boy. People said it was bad." Really? I have heard... Who would say it? I've heard nothing but good things about Good Boy. And I like Good Boy. I'm not as in love with it as everyone else is. I think a lot of people just love it just because, like, it's a horror film where the dog gets to be the star, which, I mean, that alone is a big draw. I I think the thematic elements are hammered home a little bit too easily towards the end of the film, and that's usually that's what kind of held it back for me. But in general, like the performance of the dog is really good for what he's expected to do here, what he stumbles onto. Yeah, so it's a good performance by the dog, which I can appreciate. I mean, there's very few films with dogs where they try to do more. I think the only other film I can think of that did great with a dog as a lead character in a more like vicious film was this film from many years ago called White God, which is a film about a dog trying to get back to its owner, but on that journey the dog becomes more abused by humans and essentially leads a revolution against humans. So he goes all like Planet of the Apes on humans by leading an army of dogs to wipe out humanity. It sounds like it's a comedy, but it's not. It's like straight up like a horror film. Let's see. Monkey's Brain says it's Marty Supreme. It's Marty Supreme. It's Marty Supreme. Yeah, it was. I love Marty Supreme. It was number 6 on my list this year. What's the dog doing in the film? Pretty much. Yeah, if you want a film that only focuses on the dog, I think you're probably gonna love Good Boy. In that regard, in that aspect alone. And yes, in case anyone's cautious about the film, yes, the dog survives. That dog, at least. There's a different dog, but you don't see anything. See, Mr. M1 says, I heard your movie sucks, said it was really not that great and had a really good build-up, followed by nothing happening. That's what I'd heard. For each horror scene, the build-up just had a bad payoff. I wouldn't say it's a bad payoff. I just don't think it goes anywhere more with the thematic aspects of grief and letting go of death towards the end, because it becomes like the allegory becomes very overt towards the end, which I'm not totally opposed to, but it felt like, you get to the second act and you can see where this is going, and it doesn't really divert much from there. Like there's no like massive surprise that comes in like the third act, and I think that's probably my biggest criticism. Like when you get to the third act, it's mostly just watching like a series of like scary scenes, which is, strolling towards like the allegorical ending that you could pretty much predict from the second act. So Monkey's Brain says, I've heard mixed things about Good Boy. I saw it and liked it a lot, but most people didn't enjoy the actual plot and scares. I guess I enjoyed a lot more just for being dog-related ambitions. Yeah, and that's fair. I can totally see why someone would love Good Boy in that regard. Mr. M1 says, wait, so your movie sucks lied? He said the dog dies. He went and saw it early at a festival. Well, I mean, it's implied that a dog died, because like you see this kind of like replication of death, where you watch this guy kind of like descend into the same habits of somebody else who died, and then it's kind of like the dog is kind of like given a chance to move on and live after someone else died. Now, I have heard theories that the end of the film is meant to be a little bit more allegorical, where the dog did die, and it's implied that his spirit essentially ascended to heaven. More just based by the fact that the dog like got out of the basement after witnessing like all like the horrors that just happened. I don't entirely buy that. I don't think there's enough to back that up in the film. I could see why someone might arrive at that conclusion, but the dog himself, there's another dog that dies. Like the dog discovers another corpse, but like a skeleton of like a different dog. So like I do not think the central dog dies. I think you'd probably have to make a big case that the dog was meant to die, and that it's meant to be allegorical, that he gets out of the basement, that he really just like went to the next world. So our film show at festival is not the final film. It's kind of like a beta test. Um, in some regards, it is. Like, I think a good example of this, like, there was a film that came out a few years ago called I think it's called like Boy versus World, which is about like this silent guy who goes on this quest for revenge and kills a bunch of people. And from what I understand, the festival screening had like the character silent, and then the what was it? And then in the theatrical release, they added in the voiceover of John Benjamin to add like some comedy to it. So in between the scenes where the character wasn't saying anything, they just had John Benjamin do like some silly voices over it. So it's possible that they might have changed it from the festival. I'm not entirely sure because I didn't see it at a festival. I just got like the screener come fall, so I think I'll go watch it now. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, if you like films where like the dog is the lead and you wanna see like not just like a family friendly dog movie and something that's actually willing to go into horror, yeah, it's a good film in that regard. It wasn't my favorite horror film of the year, but it's fine. It's got some decent scares in it. All right, so that is all the big films that we got to talk about today. So if you want to read any of the reviews of the films I talked about today, you can check them out on my website, movieswithmark.com. And you're going to want to stick with us on this channel here, so be sure to like this video so that more people know about Resurrection. Everyone needs to know about this film, so be sure to like this film so that be sure to like this video so that more people will know about the film. Like, go out and see Resurrection. Also be sure to subscribe as well to stay up to date on latest movies, because there's a lot happening in 2026. A lot of movies to cover, a lot of video essays coming up. I am working on one about Jester Bell. The script is almost done. I'm going to film it soon and probably release it next week. And if you want early access to it, be sure to go to Patreon. My Patreon listed below, where you will gain early access to seeing that video when it is first done. Which, again, thank you to all the patrons from last year. We've had a lot of new patrons, and your support has really made it much better. It has made it more fun to make these videos and get them out a little bit early for all you who've been supporting me. And I will finish the next movie history book that I'm writing. It's taking a little bit longer, but it's not going to take as long as the book I did on Saturday Morning Cartoon. I promise you, don't freak out. Thank you, Boba. Mr. M1 says, what was your favorite horror film of 2025? Well, the easy answer is Sinners. Sinners, I love a lot. It's framed beautifully. I love the infusion of music, how it focuses on culture, how the vampires arrive at just the right moment. So yeah, Sinners was an easy pick. But there was a lot of great horror. I mean, like, it was a toss-up between that and stuff like The Long Walk and Weapons and Frankenstein, and there were so many good choices this year that it was a good problem to have, of trying to choose a good horror film. But yeah, I think if I had to choose one, Sinners is the one I would go with, just because that film really resonated with me. It was beautiful to see, the way that it infused music, the way that it was sexy and vicious, and just everyone in the ensemble was just having a ball with the material. It really worked for me. Yeah, Sinners kicks ass. Monkey's Brains, I was going to see Resurrection tonight, but I'm sick. I got the ticket changed to Monday, thankfully. Oh, good. Thank goodness. Mr. M1 says, how about It? Welcome to Derry. I've heard it's really good. I haven't seen it just because it was fall time, and that's when I'm fully engaged with watching movies more than television, as opposed to like there is some TV I start in October and then try to finish. Like I did finish The Chair Company and Haha You Clowns, just because they weren't huge time investments. And it's usually if I pick like one or two shows I can watch a week I can get to, but I will eventually get around to watching that show. Rody and T says, oh my god, lol, my volume is up because Mark's mic is kind of low. Oh, is the mic still low? It's a weird directional mic. I'm trying to I'm really gonna have to like get this thing in closer. It's right here, and I think I have the. Actually, let me check if I got the audio turned up here. Yeah, it's at max. Isn't it? Yeah, it's max. Oh, good. It's good quality, but man, I gotta boost this stuff when I edit. Yeah. Also, I was like leaning back a lot more, so it's much harder there. I gotta direct straight into the mic, and I do that. Okay, so let's see. Mr. M1 says, you know what I really want to see come back, or at least have the old episode streaming? Tales from the Dark Side. Oh yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen that one. Is that not streaming anywhere? I thought it would. Actually, no, you're right, because last year I think I actually looked it up and I couldn't find it. Oh my god, someone's got to get on that. Like, really? Oh my god. Yeah, I'm looking at my levels here. I really got to boost this because this is a good quality microphone, but like I have the output set at max in both like the microphone itself and the Streamlabs, but I got to turn it up. So I guess that's good as time as any to call the stream there. So yeah, go check out those great movies that I recommended. Resurrection and Marty Supreme were two of my favorite films this year. Like Marty Supreme was at number 6 on my list, and Resurrection was at number 1. And yeah, stay tuned to this channel. In about 2 weeks, we will be talking about 28 years later, The Bone Temple, starring Ray Fiennes. And sometime next week, there should be a video essay on Jester Bell and how she's a fool talking about films. So there's a lot more coming up. So yeah, thank you all for joining me. I hope you go see some good films this weekend, and I hope you stick with me for 2026. So yeah, until the next stream, have a good one, everybody.